we're going to tie together two ideas that are part of our life as a church. One, we're tracking along with these sermons and the sermon series and kind of unpacking those. And two, there are just a certain set of values that we live by as a church that drive the things that we do. And this month, every month, we just started a few months ago, every month highlighting one of our values. And at the beginning of the month, so this is the beginning of March when we're recording this, so we're launching into a new month. Our value this month is hospitality. The sermon theme from this past weekend was persistence, as we're looking at what does it mean to love God and neighbor. And it occurs to me that those two ideas really connect. I mean, there's some overlap there with what we're focusing on this week as we're following through the sermon series and what we're focusing on this month as we lean into the kinds of values that we want to characterize us as a church. And so thought we might talk about that today, just kind of the intersection of persistence and hospitality. And what does one have to do with the other and how do they go together? Because as I've reflected on it, I think they go together quite a lot, and we can explore that a little bit.
Well, welcome back to the Four Leg Norman podcast, everybody. I'm here with Anson Hanbury, our lead pastor. My name is Tucker Firm, the community pastor here at Lake Norman Baptist. And it came to me recently that it's been a while since we've introduced ourselves. I always say your name, but I don't.
Who is this
I'm
guy?
just a nameless podcast host.
That Tennessee fan.
Yeah. Always wearing orange. What's up with that guy?
Got a lot of orange.
I do have a lot of orange. You know?
Yeah.
It is
Today you got some.
I know. And it's not
Tennessee.
even
It's
Tennessee.
close to Tennessee orange.
Yeah. It's the warm weather.
Yeah.
I'm about to be.
It's a good one today.
Oh yeah. The whole weekend's supposed to be nice too.
Nice.
I'm about to be a different person. I get way more joyful when the sun comes out.
The vitamin D is a boost.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Me too. I like it.
Yep. Yeah. So that's reason to celebrate, while we're
Sure.
on the podcast. And if you're in somewhere where that's not the case for you and you're listening, then I apologize.
It's a good reason to be in Charlotte, North Carolina in early March. And it's like 75 and sunny. It may be pushing 80 out there.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the case my many years in Chicago. To have this kind of weather this time of year, man, I'll take it any day of the week.
God is good.
Indeed.
Well, we are continuing in our sermon series for God and Neighbor, talking about how we as a church can position ourselves to gain new friends in our community. And, last week we talked about the keys of looking for examples in our lives of forgiveness, of faith, and of humble service. So where are you wanting to take us this week, Anson?
Yeah, this week we're seeing yet another parable of Jesus, realizing just how much of his teaching came through stories and parables. And the one this week is about this widow who was persistent in seeking justice. And so it's talking about, in the parable, Jesus gives it to expressly teach his disciples about persistence in prayer. And this is one of the parables. Sometimes you have a parable and it's not explained, and, it's either obvious or it's debated, or like, how do we interpret this parable? This one doesn't leave room for debate because Jesus is very clear, or I guess Luke is very clear because it says Jesus told this parable in order to
Mm-hmm.
teach his disciples that they should pray and not give up. So it's kind of nice when it's that explicit in the Bible and it's like, oh, we know exactly what this means.
Mm-hmm.
A couple weeks ago, Jesus did that with the parable of the dishonest sales manager. So this is one of these. So it's about, persistence in prayer, not giving up, waiting on the Lord to bring justice in our lives. And so that's where I go in the sermon and talk about how that's an aspect of loving God and neighbor. Like when we are persistent in our conversation with God, bringing our needs to God, even over and over and over again, it's kind of like that depending that we talked about
Mm-hmm.
several weeks ago. It shows love for God that we would depend on him.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're in our prayers, we're doing a lot of things in our prayers, right? Praying for
Mm-hmm.
our own needs is one of the natural things, but praying for the needs of others, showing love for neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
others in our lives. So the life of prayer persistently that we have, I think, is a demonstration of love for God and neighbor, and so it's one of the aspects, and that's kind of what we're getting at in the sermon series, and then applying it to our church. How can we persistently seek after what God wants to do in our church and in our community, and how can we be consistently praying about that,
Mm-hmm.
asking God to do these things? Um, so that's where the sermon goes. But also, we're kicking off a new month, and one of the things that we started just a few months ago at our church is each month highlighting one of our values. So we have 4 church values that really drive our ministry programming, our thinking, our strategy, and the things that we try to do. So we talk about them a lot around here: compassion, hospitality, generosity, and commitment. And so what we've just committed to do is every month highlight one of those, and we'll just kind of cycle through them. So 3 times a year, we'll focus on one of those values as the months cycle by. And we kick that off. I've been writing a letter at the beginning of each month, um, call it the monthly, very creative, that just sort of, I share some personal interaction with each of these values, what it's meant to me personally, and then kind of cast some vision for what this value can look like in our church. So I just wrote that letter,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's fresh on my mind, thinking about the sermon that we were in this past weekend, and these ideas of persistence and hospitality. And I think they really intersect in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so thought we might spend some time unpacking that and just thinking about what hospitality has meant in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and not just occasional hospitality, but specifically the value of persistence in opening our lives to others and welcoming them in, and the impact that can have on our own individual lives, families, within a church, and ultimately out into our community.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be for Lake Norman. And I think, one of the most powerful ways that anybody can be for their community is by setting an example, and being persistent in being hospitable.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this bubbles up from time to time in our conversations, talking about the value of community and in a church setting, in a neighborhood setting, but specifically thinking about persistence and
Mm-hmm.
how that doesn't only apply to prayer, but it applies to so many things in our lives. And I think our commitment to hospitality is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent out a email to our group leaders this week of just something I had heard that stuck with me. But um, Acts 2:42 through 47 is widely talked about as like a blueprint for what the early church was all about. It says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, to the prayers, and it lists all these things.
Mm.
But the only thing that's repeated multiple times is sharing a meal together. So the breaking of bread is mentioned twice, and then it's also mentioned that they ate together.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent that to our group leaders just to encourage them with the importance of that moment of their group gathering time, which if you're interested in a group, most of our groups have food as part of it, which is quite the draw to come join one. But
Yeah, that's a helpful aspect of good
yes,
hospitality.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's a key aspect of hospitality. And I think I heard one time in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is either leaving a meal, going to a meal, or at a meal with people,
Huh. Yeah.
um, which I find just really
Yeah.
fascinating. But I
Yeah.
think,
Well, and he talks about like the coming kingdom as a banquet.
yep,
I mean, there's so many different things around sharing a meal
mhm,
together
yeah.
that is central to the Bible.
Yeah, and I think sharing a meal is part of that act of hospitality, and what it does is it creates a space for people to really connect with one another, and it can break down walls and barriers that people put up towards building
Yeah.
relationships because
Hmm.
we all love to eat. And so, no matter how you view things differently, if you're
Yeah.
being invited to a meal, you're more likely to actually have conversations with people who may think differently than you.
Yeah.
So I would agree 100%. I think hospitality is truly one of the most powerful ways we can, and one of the most simple ways that we can reach
Right.
our community.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes space for relationships.
Mhm. Yeah.
So in the letter that I wrote to our congregation, um, told a story of really one of the more powerful moments for my wife and me as we were considering making the move down here to Lake Norman.
Mhm.
So, we were 13 years in the Chicago area, serving in a couple of churches up there during that time. I always kind of wanted to get back down south. We're originally from Florida, didn't really want to go all the way back to Florida.
Mhm.
So this was just the right kind of place that, geographically at least we wanted to be. So there's a lot going for it when this opportunity came up and we were interviewing. This is about 4 years ago. And got into the interview process and all the things. And so, yeah, if you've, not familiar with the church world, it's not unlike, interviewing for most any kind of a job that's going to
Mhm.
involve a move. There's some travel to see the area, interview with a search team, all the things. So on one of our visits down here, the search team that was, seeking the next pastor was hosting us, and a lot of formal steps in that visit. But one of the evenings, we were just at the home of one of the search team members and their family. And I think it was not only the search team members, but their spouses as well. So this was just a more social
Mhm.
setting for us to be able to just connect and get to know each other, which is not uncommon. It's a good thing to do.
Mhm.
Uh, so it was a nice meal, and all the things were good, as you would expect. But there was at some point, well, after dinner was over, and we were just kind of mingling, and I remember I was standing in the kitchen chatting with one or two, of the search team folks, when the noise from the dining room was like getting louder and louder, and they're just like this roar of laughter goes up, and they're just having a time. So like we all look over, and there's my wife sitting at the dining room table with, I don't know, 7 or 8
Mhm.
of the search team and spouses, and I don't remember who all was at the table. It was just a mix of men and women who were a part of that process. And they were cracking jokes, telling stories like they were, childhood
Mhm.
friends and having a big time. And um, it was just very easy. It was very
Mhm.
natural. It felt very much at home. And I remember when Dina and I got back to the hotel that night, she was like, "Oh, I could do church with these people."
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, you went through all the formal steps and,
Mhm.
what do you believe? And, vision and all these things. I had my questions. They had their questions. Dina had her questions. So, you're in
Mhm.
this feeling this opportunity out phase. But that was really a shift moment for us that was like, it went from we're exploring this opportunity and this looks promising to, yeah, I want to be a part of this church family. This feels right.
Yeah.
And it was because of the hospitality of that night.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just food. It wasn't just, being in a home. It was everything that went along with it.
Mhm.
It was making the space, taking time to get to know one another.
Mhm.
And it made a huge impact on our lives
Mhm.
because here we are.
Yeah.
Had that night gone differently, right?
Mhm.
Had we come and didn't receive a warm welcome and it just sort of felt awkward and stilted, who knows? Maybe
Mhm.
maybe things would have gone a different direction. Um, but for us, that was a that was a great moment of experiencing the hospitality of the church, the
Mhm.
people, and made a huge difference in our lives.
Yeah.
And I look back at that. I'm grateful for it. And I want personally to be able to extend that same type of hospitality to others. And my hope is that our church would be characterized
Mhm.
by that kind of hospitality more and more and more,
Mhm.
spread out into the various homes all around Lake Norman and the surrounding area, but also collectively here on our campus. We have the opportunity in physical space to create opportunities for hospitality, to
Mhm.
welcome in our friends and neighbors.
Mhm.
And when we do that, I think several things happen. Three of them, I highlighted in this month's letter. One, it gives us a chance to connect with one another, people that we know and have a relationship with, to cultivate that and grow deeper. It also is an opportunity to gain new friends, to build new relationships. And then there's this mysterious dimension where one of the writers of Scripture says in Hebrews, sometimes when we entertain others, we might be hosting angels and we don't even know it.
Mhm.
So there's a spiritual dimension to it as well. So might be fun to kind of unpack each of those. Like in our
Mhm.
experience, I'd love to hear your experience of how hospitality has been effective, both in deepening existing relationships, creating opportunity for new relationships, and maybe even thinking about some of the spiritual dimension that's gone on. Jesus also said, what you do to the least of these, you do unto me.
Mhm.
And he talks about how the way that we treat others
Mhm.
in a spiritual way is how we're treating Jesus. So um, each of those ways, I think hospitality shows up and is powerful. And I think it's something that we need to be committed to, like,
Mhm.
and have some persistence. And anybody that's planned any kind of event of any kind knows that to make something happen, even if it's just having one, individual or couple over for dinner, sometimes that actually takes quite a bit of persistence just to get
Mhm.
something on the calendar.
Yeah.
So anyway, the interaction of these two things and the various ways that hospitality shows up.
Yeah.
Um, so be curious, just what does anything come top of mind for you in terms of an experience in your life where hospitality made a difference?
Well, first I will say you did take your experience on that, um, I don't know what you call it, like discovery trip. I don't know what it's called.
Candidate visit?
Canada, yeah.
Yeah,
Of receiving that hospitality, and when you actually came on board as the lead pastor, you started hosting,
yeah,
staff dinners over at
yeah. We
your
did.
house, and you reciprocated that hospitality towards all of us. So, um, that's one that stands out because your wife does the fried taco
She
shells,
does the fried taco
which
shells.
is I had never experienced
That
that
takes hospitality to another level. I'm not
it
going to
does,
lie.
yeah, it does. It adds a little something special to it, and it was memorable.
Yeah, yeah,
But it was a great way for us to, like, get to know your family a lot faster than we probably would have under any other circumstances
sure.
because we were sharing a meal together, we were in your home, uh, yeah, just seeing how you guys did life, and you just welcomed us into it, so,
Yeah.
uh,
Now that you got me thinking about those,
yeah.
yeah, that was huge for us. That was
Mhm,
something, it was, I'm glad it was, um, helpful
mhm,
and beneficial for you guys. It was also helpful for us.
yeah,
So just the chance for us to connect and get to know that was important for us. The fried taco shells is a story in and of itself too that I think
mhm,
is a hospitality story, where another one where people extended hospitality to us and it was really meaningful. The first year of our marriage, so before we had kids and it was just Dina and me,
mhm,
we actually went out and we lived in Montana for a year before we went to seminary, just to go and be ski bums. So we went out at the beginning of ski season,
mhm,
got some odd jobs, and rented a little house, cheap little house, for the season.
mhm,
And they had seasonal rentals up there, so we did that and wound up just working at a ski resort and skiing as much as we possibly could. That was our sole goal moving out there. Well, we found a little church in our
mhm,
town that we started to go to, and I mean, we hadn't visited but once or twice maybe, and one of the staff members invited us over to a Monday Night Football dinner party.
mhm,
And this was just something they did every football season. They would invite people from the church, and one of the assistant pastors on staff kind of spearheaded this effort, and he would intentionally invite a mix of people that were had been at the church for a while and newer folks and any
Mhm.
guests who had come that they would just, hey, if you want to come join us. And they had it down to a science. It was great, And so he would say, hey, will you bring diced tomatoes and shredded
Mhm.
cheese, And then somebody else had diced onions and guacamole. And everybody kind of brought a little something to contribute. The hosts, it was always at the same host home. And
Mhm.
what they would do was the taco meat and the fried shells. And so that was our first experience. We went over, and I believe they were from Southern California. I think the husband was from Southern California, the wife was from Mexico, and just from their region where they grew up, this is how they did it.
Mm.
And so she would just take ordinary flour tortillas from the grocery store, but fry them in like an inch of oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, whatever, on the
Mhm.
stovetop, and it transforms a flour
It
shell
does.
into something, kind of heavenly.
Mhm.
Not as good for corn shells, but the flour shells, they kind of have a sweetness and a crunch, and it's
Mhm.
so good. So we went home from that first. I'm going to home in on the fried shells, but
Yeah, yeah.
the whole hospitality experience was great. We
Yeah.
felt welcomed in. We wound up, we only lived there. It was less than a year, maybe 10 months
Mhm.
for that little adventure. But we got closer to those people.
Mm.
And I can't say that we still have them. That was 26 years ago. So
Mhm.
I can't say that we still have ongoing connections, although my wife may through
Yeah.
Facebook. Um, but we had ongoing friendships that were formed over a handful of nights on
Mhm.
those Monday night football nights, eating taco, always the same thing every week, same sort of taco plan.
Mhm.
And we just kind of carried that forward. So ever
Mhm.
since that season of our life, we've done taco nights, and Dina fries the shells, and we do the meat and invite people to bring the toppings. And it's just kind of been a thing that we've adopted for literally probably 26 years,
Mhm.
that was modeled for us when we were a young couple, and just made a huge impression. And
Mhm.
it was everything the Bible talks about with hospitality. We felt welcomed, we felt
Yeah.
known, we made friends. Um, yeah, it was a meaningful thing. So
Mhm.
all wrapped up in a shell
Yeah.
that's fried.
Yeah. Yeah, I have so many examples I could say about just hospitality and the impact it's had on me. One that sticks out is, I worked at a summer camp,
Yeah.
uh, 2 summers in a row, but one of the full-time staff members at the camp, um, he was he was so cool, like,
Yeah.
you if you saw him, you would you would wonder, like, "Is this guy, like, a hippie or, like, on drugs or something? Because he's got blonde dreads and just the longest, like, mustache that completely covers his, like, upper lip,
Oh, funny.
but, he was, like, hilarious and did not do drugs. I'll
Okay.
just clarify.
That's
But
good.
he was a mountain man and loved being
Yeah.
outdoors. He actually led their, like, um, outdoor, like, discipleship program.
Mhm.
And, but during the summers, he would help out at the camp. And, I remember him and his wife, they didn't have any kids. They were probably around my age now or maybe early 30s.
Mhm.
And, they had a small house, um, and they would on the weekends so we would work at the camp pretty much sun up, sundown from Monday at noon to Saturday around noon-ish.
Mhm.
And so on the weekends, that was like the main time for us to hang out or go do other stuff. And so, Saturday nights, they would just have us over to their house for dinner or just to hang out around a fire. I remember one Monday morning, they had us over for breakfast, and his wife made the best homemade cinnamon rolls
Mm.
I've ever had in my life, and I still remember them. Um, but specifically the guy, Curtis, I became so close to him and trusted him so much, not because, like, we spent a lot of time talking about the Bible or, like, he was sharing wisdom with me all the time, but I
Mhm.
think it was because they were so hospitable
Yeah.
in opening up their home to us
Mhm.
that I just he was who I wanted to go to when I wanted to talk through things or had questions above anybody else because he created a space for me to trust him, and it was the
Yeah.
persistence that I think created
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. It's great. So let's try to categorize these a little bit. It strikes me as you're talking, I got 2 or 3 stories popping in my head.
Yeah.
We could just go all over the place. Let's see if we can locate them in these 3 areas sort of biblically. So the
Yeah.
first one being hospitality is a way that connects us to people, that are in our lives, people that share our faith, people that are a part of our lives. This is a church family, like if a part of a local church, certainly ours, we're thinking about our church context, but any, local church family, it helps people deepen those relationships. And there's a couple of ways that the Bible specifically talks about that. So in First Peter, Peter talks about the call to show love to one another and how love covers a multitude of sins. How do you show love? He says, offer hospitality to one another. And in that text, it actually says, do it without grumbling, which is interesting. Like, I wonder what's behind, that specific way of framing it for Peter in that context and under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. It says, love one another deeply. Love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality without grumbling. So like all these things, tied together, we should joyfully create these opportunities. And maybe there was even a hint of recognition of the inconvenience of practicing hospitality, because it doesn't just happen. Anybody that's committed to creating
it takes sacrifice
environments, it does. It takes sacrifice. It takes work. There's a cost to it. So yeah, I mean, there's an investment there. So maybe some people knew they were supposed to do it, but they like to complain about it. Who knows? But the idea there is it's an expression of love, I think, is the core for that section. Paul talks about it in Romans 12 in the context of meeting one another's needs. He says, care for one another, share among one another to meet everyone's needs, in your church community or in your area. And do it by practicing hospitality. So showing love to one another, sharing and meeting one another's needs, both are roles and functions of hospitality, outcomes of hospitality. And there is a persistence required in making that happen. And so I think about, so Dina and I are a part of a community group. We started it almost 2 years ago now. And every small group, community group, whatever you call them, and whatever your church experience is, every time we've been a part of a group, it always starts off kind of tentative. Rarely do you have a first gathering of people who don't already know one another well, and it just is so easy. And there is a bit of a feeling it out, and then some people are, you get all the personality ranges, right, from extroverts to introverts to some people are showing up because they they don't have any friends, and this is a way to try to, maybe they're brand new to to a church and they're kind of putting themselves out there, but man, it's a risk. Like, it's a big deal. And so if you're somebody that's put yourself out there and it was uncomfortable, good for you. I think that's a commitment, and that's a sticking yourself out there to make those connections can be a big step for people, but it's worth it. But it usually takes time, right? So we've been meeting for a couple of years. We had a couple of iterations of that group along the way. There was a subset of it that all kind of lived in a separate area. They broke off and started their own, and so that kind of changed some of the dynamics of our group. But every time we meet, we know these people a little bit better, and it gets a little bit richer. It gets a little bit more meaningful. It gets a little bit easier to reach out to some people from that group for other things in life. We just this past week, we're working on a project at the house. I was helping Martin out with we have the Grand Prix race with Awana, or it's like the Pinewood Derby cars, and somebody in our group, they've got a great workshop. And so we don't have all the, the woodworking tools or whatever. So I'm imagining trying to make some of these cuts on Martin's little wooden car with the handsaw that I have. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea. Like, if I try to do what I want to do, I'm going to, risk cutting my finger off. And at the best case scenario, it's going to look all janky and terrible. And it occurs to me, hey, there's somebody in our community group that I've gotten to know well enough, and they live not far away. He's got all the tools. It's a Saturday morning. And I just had no qualms about texting and going, "Hey, can we pop over and are you at home? And we got this little project going on."
Mhm.
And he was so glad that we did.
Yeah.
And it's just those little things. I mean, that's a very small thing, but we talk about, sometimes we talk about this idea of a 2 a.m. friend. Like
Yeah.
if
Mhm.
something meaningfully goes wrong in your life, do you have these kinds of people that there's enough
Mhm.
relationship to reach out to when these
Yeah.
things happen?
Well, and
Mm,
that's an example of the sharing you were talking
yeah.
about, of like, yeah, sharing to meet the needs of those in your community.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is just a persistent commitment to being in these hospitable relationships with people. It just has an accumulating effect over time where, yeah, it
Mhm.
is a place where we can show love to one another, where we can share with one another and care for each other. So I think in my own experience has been rich, but it does take persistence
Mhm.
to get to that kind of a place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think consistency relationally is huge, and relationships grow in the soil of doing hospitality well. And
Mhm.
so to be to develop deep authentic relationships, you have to be consistent in creating
Mhm.
spaces of hospitality. Um and so yeah, I think, you know, in the category of gaining new friends, I think an organization that does this really well that you're very familiar with, we're piloting a group through it with our young adult group right now,
Mhm.
but the organization Alpha,
Yeah.
um, does a really good job with this concept. They always have a meal as part of the gathering, and they say the reason for that is because you have people coming in who don't know each other and also have varying stages of belief,
Mhm.
and are at different stages in their spiritual journey. And so the meal is an opportunity to just get people talking and getting to know one another and kind of building that trust as the weeks go on. I was listening to a podcast of a church who runs Alpha really well,
Mhm.
and they had someone who attended throughout the whole thing, and they got to week 10, and the guy came up to the host and said, you've been talking these 10 weeks, and I didn't trust you or trust any Christian for that matter
Mm.
until this week. So I'm gonna have to come back for the next alpha class because I didn't hear anything that you said
Wow.
before. But it just goes to prove what we're talking about of like the consistency and the persistence is what it takes to build trust with someone so
Yeah.
that they do value what you're saying. And I think, um, and for those of you who aren't familiar, alpha is like a video series with a whole system built around it, specifically designed for those who maybe don't go to church regularly or don't follow Jesus at all and are asking
Mhm.
questions and exploring. And so that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about
Mhm.
alpha. But I think for our group, it even just opens up a space for people, whether they've grown up in the church or not, just to ask questions that they've
Yeah.
maybe not felt the freedom to ask. And Alpha um, encourages each of the hosts and the helpers in three main areas, which is love, which is what you were talking
Mhm.
about a second ago. That is our ultimate motivation for people, not fear of what their set of beliefs is having or
Mhm.
the effect it's having on their life or whatever other motivation you could have. We want to begin with love.
Yeah.
Listen is the second core piece of
Mhm.
it. So, not dominating conversations, but asking the right questions and then listening and
Mhm.
making sure everybody feels comfortable talking, and has the space to talk. And then, they also say laugh as one of the
Yeah.
key things, which is just have fun together
Yeah.
and enjoy each other's company and do dumb icebreaker games. And um, yeah, hospitality is truly an art, and I think
Yeah.
it takes a lot of practice to learn how to do it well,
Yeah.
and that's where that persistence comes in. And alpha is an example of just one way you can go about gaining new friends
Yeah.
who through hospitality who maybe don't know Jesus yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that example of it took 10 weeks
Mhm.
for someone to build a level of trust
Mhm.
that they were open to that relationship. And that's probably not as rare as maybe we might think.
Mhm.
I mean, I think even for any of us,
Mhm.
in a new setting, especially if they're talking about things that are a different belief system
Yeah.
than where I come from. I mean, that's going to take a minute, and
Mhm.
I think that's just natural.
Mhm.
So most things in life, right, that are really important and really valuable don't happen in a microwave.
Mhm.
They take persistence. They
Yeah.
take repeated, just experiences and consistently repeated experiences over time, and a lot of intentionality. Alpha's a very intentional
Mhm.
kind of ministry. I'd love to see us at some point get, utilize that framework at our church as well. There are
Mhm.
some in our area that do already.
Mhm.
But I think that is a great example.
Yeah. And I would say if you're listening to this and you are a young adult and you do have questions, or maybe you've been out of church for a while and you're looking to get plugged back in, we would love to have you at our Alpha group. Connect with us through the website in the description. I'd be happy to get you some more information, and you can come share a meal with us sometime.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing. So yeah, kind of moved that into the category
Yeah.
of biblically, hospitality doesn't only connect people who already know each other
Mhm.
and go deeper, it helps new people connect. Little tiny book toward the end of the Bible called Third John. So
Mhm.
there's first, second, and third John. It only has one chapter, so it's not even like Third John 1 or 2. It's just Third John and 14 or 15
Yeah.
verses, whatever it is. Um, and so it's this short little letter that he wrote to Gaius, someone in the early church. Gaius shows up a couple of times in the New Testament. Might be the same Gaius, might be a different Gaius. But this Gaius was a great example of hospitality, and not just of people that he already knew, but he had gained this reputation of opening his home to strangers. If you look up the root word, the roots of the word hospitality, I
Mhm.
think it goes back to Latin roots, and it's connected to hosting and being a guest for strangers.
Mhm.
If you read the Bible, there's just even if you just go to a Bible search,
Mhm.
keyword search in the Bible, put in stranger, and both in the Old Testament and New Testament, you'll see a lot about how we treat the stranger.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So the Greek of the word hospitality in most uses in the New Testament is philoxenia, and if you break that apart, it
mhm,
philo means love of, and then xenia means foreigner or stranger.
yeah. So
So
love
yeah,
of stranger. Yeah,
even Latin and Greek and all the
it
things,
goes
that's what
back.
it's trying to point out.
Right. Yeah. So the stranger is a key figure, right? And
Yes.
that just means, I think in our context, that almost has like a negative context, like stranger danger,
Yeah.
stranger things.
Yeah.
Um, but I think in the classic sense, it's just someone that we don't know, a
Mhm.
foreigner,
Mhm.
a guest that's
Mhm.
not a regular. Um, so being open to hosting people. And so what John is doing in the letter is he's commending his friend Gaius and saying, good for you for your example, your modeling of hospitality. This is how we should behave. We should show hospitality to one another, even the stranger, so that we might work together for the truth. And so it's this not just a passing sharing of a meal and someone moving on, but it speaks to a partnership, and connecting people who were not previously connected,
Mhm.
which is something that, yet again, takes some time and intentionality and persistence to create those opportunities. Um, Maybe even more so than with people that we already know. And I think the one of the critical pieces of persistence, consistency in this area is always being ready
Mhm.
for when the stranger comes to our doors. Um, that's harder to think about in a home anymore because,
Mhm.
but certainly as we think about it as a church, the church is open primarily every weekend for services, but then there's a lot of other events and ministry things happening during the week. And I think for those of us who are steeped in church culture, this is a call for us to always be welcoming, always be looking up for opportunities to be hospitable and welcoming to to new people who are coming for whom this is an unfamiliar experience. I think there's a lot of applications to what is our physical space like? What, do we have good signage? Do we have, are we prepared with volunteers and staff to be at places to welcome people and make them feel comfortable? And we go to great lengths to try and do that well. Don't always do it perfectly, but it speaks to the value behind that of hospitality for every church gathering. And it's very easy, I think, just like in a lot of life, when you get in any kind of a routine, is to kind of become complacent and not always be actively seeking to provide that level of welcome. But I think that's one of the challenges and calls for us as Christians, as a church, specifically in our function as a church. And we've been talking about this a lot as a church, investing in our physical space, because that has impact on the experience of hospitality. So there's just so many layers to creating the kind of hospitable spaces for the sake of, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, gaining new friends. So I think these concepts are very much intertwined.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in both of those first two categories, just the significance of hospitality as a way to form relationships. Because I think when you're talking about our church, like a Sunday morning service, I think it's a great example of to think about it a step further, other than just like, okay, we should have something for people to eat and drink probably, but like, what are some of the other things we don't think about that are good to think through? Like, if someone's coming on our campus for the first time and they have no idea where to go or no idea how to check their kids in, or they're eating up so much time that they could be getting to know someone at our church
Right.
by trying to figure out all those things.
We don't want them wandering the halls.
Yeah. So I think the more you can eliminate barriers for people to connect is really the idea behind hospitality, whether it's with a stranger or with someone you're looking to connect with on a deeper level. And I think, whether it's a small group or Bible study or our worship service on Sunday, or you're just having people over for dinner at your house, I think as Christians, we should always be thinking, how am I setting up this space to help people connect and get to know one another? And there's a lot of things we can do without realizing it to get in the way of that.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And that, we could do a whole podcast on specifics of those kinds of things for sure. And I think this third category lends even more kind of holy importance to those things. Couple of interesting passages in the Bible where, mentioned earlier in Hebrews, it says, be sure to practice hospitality toward the stranger, because you never know when you're going to host an angel without knowing it. The old translation, I think King James, is like entertaining angels unawares. So just a reminder that the physical world that we live in isn't the only reality. We live in a spiritual world, and just because we can't see all of these things, there is a higher spiritual reality in play that we may never know. But what may appear to be an ordinary human being like you and me, maybe that was an angel of the Lord to pay us a visit. Almost like, I don't think God does like a secret shopper.
Yeah.
I don't think
Undercover
that's it.
boss.
That's right. I don't think that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out different one day. But that's kind of what lands in my head, right? Is like, okay, we need to think we're not just living on a physical plane, but we're literally involved in spiritual things all the time, and we need to have that awareness and have that mindset. And then Jesus in Matthew 25 is talking about, when he returns, and it's, the day of judgment, and Jesus is making all things right. He's talking about those who will be blessed and those who will be judged. And when he speaks to those who will be blessed, he says, one of the reasons you're blessed is because when I was a stranger, you invited me in. When I was hungry and needy, you met my needs. And he's speaking to people, and they were like, well, when did we do that? And he said, every time you did it to one of the least of these, you did it unto me. And kind of the punchline there is when I was a stranger, you invited me in. And I think that's a holy call for all of us to realize that for every human being that we are able to serve through hospitality, able to show love to, able to reach out to and help connect through hospitality, we're not only serving those people, but we're serving Jesus himself.
Mhm.
And if the first set of motivations wasn't enough, we ought to care
Yeah.
that we're serving Jesus well
Mhm.
and carrying out the mission and vision that he has given us to be the kind of people that reflect his love
Mhm.
and lay down our lives for one another in the way that he laid his life down for us. And so hospitality is not just a nice thing. It's not just an add-on feature. It's not just a luxury. This is carrying out the love of Jesus in the way that we
Yeah.
interact with people.
Yeah, I think even in the Old Testament, you see this concept show up. I think it's funny that we're talking about this because just this morning I was reading the passage in Genesis where the three unidentified men
Yeah.
pay a visit to Abraham and
Yeah.
Sarah, and Abraham goes to great lengths to host them
Yes, he
and
does.
make sure they have food, make sure they're comfortable, and um, that there's an interesting interaction where they tell him he's going to bear a son, and Sarah laughs in the tent, and they have this whole
Yeah. It's
conversation.
an interesting
It's
story.
an interesting story, and we're never told who it is
Mm-hmm.
specifically, but a lot of people think like that was God Himself appearing
Mm.
to Abraham, and that's a common interpretation. Um, and there's also some people who have dug into like the history and just context in that culture of sacrifices at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and this was talked about in a class I was taking on First Corinthians. So Paul writes to the church in Corinth about eating food sacrificed to idols, and the reason he even has to address it is because in the pagan cultures, when things were sacrificed, it was viewed as having a meal with whatever god you were sacrificing it to.
Interesting.
And so it just got me thinking like that how does that apply to like the sacrificial system in Leviticus, and what does that mean for how Israel related to God? Like, why were there so many specifications on this is how you do it? Well, maybe it's a hospitality thing. Maybe maybe it's this
Yeah.
relational, it's more than just a sacrifice in the way that we think of it, but there's
Yeah.
more going on there. There's this relational component to it. Um And I think that's super
I
interesting.
hadn't heard that before, but it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. I thought so too.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of the things that we don't understand about the culture, like you say, like when you learn about what they would have understood at the time,
Mhm.
how they would have interpreted these instructions from God,
Mhm.
if they understood those sorts of things to be sharing a meal with the deity,
Yeah.
and here come these instructions, and we don't see it, we don't get it. That's not
Mhm.
our framework.
Mhm.
We totally miss that.
Yeah.
But that it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I've been reading through Leviticus again, and yeah,
Yeah.
it is a different, it makes you look at it in a different way
Yeah.
because we read it and we're like, "Why the heck were there so many specifics about how to kill the animal and
Wow.
what to do with it?" And like,
Interesting.
but I think if you think about it in the sense of like, God's giving us instructions on how to share a meal with Him.
Yeah.
That's beautiful,
That's pretty good.
and it was tied to their sin as well and the ways they've grieved God. But even in that, He's telling them a way that they can still come to the table after they've sinned.
Right.
I'm like,
And he's gonna welcome them in.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've said for a while, I think, and I'm more and more convinced of it, I think hospitality may be the most underrated, or at least one of the most underrated themes in the Bible,
Yeah.
or under-recognized
Hmm.
themes in the Bible. because it doesn't always go by the same name,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes it's talking about how you treat the stranger. Sometimes it does say hospitality. A lot of times it talks about the table and
Mhm.
table fellowship. I mean, communion, the Lord's Supper,
Yeah,
is a table fellowship.
absolutely.
And some of the history of the culture and the context, I mean, to share a meal at a table was a sign of fellowship and
Mhm.
acceptance and love. And so I think because it goes by so many different names in the Bible,
Mhm.
we miss maybe the connectivity of all of it to go, this is all hospitality.
Mhm.
This is all about being at the table with God.
Mhm.
And in the sacrificial system, yeah, how do we do that? How do we
Yeah.
prepare for that? How can we appropriately
Mhm.
be clean enough?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so also in the Old Testament, you look at Israel's, like, um, I guess, calendar of, like, festivals or whatever.
Yeah,
A third of it was feasting and celebrating,
you're right.
and, like, I think we as Americans just have such a or I would say the church in the West has lost that piece of, like, tying our faith in with this concept of, like, feasting with friends and
Yeah.
celebrating the things God has done. Um, I was even reading through the Exodus, and he gives instructions for right after the Passover,
Mhm.
he gives instructions for this Passover feast,
Mhm.
and he says that the purpose was for them to gather together and remember how God had
Mhm.
delivered them.
Mhm.
And I just started thinking about it, and I was like, why do we not do that anymore? Like, how cool would that be
Yeah.
to get a group of friends together, have an awesome meal, and then go around the table and say, "Hey, here's some ways God's delivered me this year or in the past,"
Right.
and, just celebrate that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
God cares about people
Yeah.
sharing meals together and creating spaces for
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah. So I think, I mean, it's us individually as,
Mhm.
families in our homes and
Mhm.
couples, individuals, whatever it is, whatever your family situation
Yeah.
is, and also as a church to model it and to create
Mhm.
spaces for us to do these things together.
Yeah. The family thing, I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like that's one we don't think about. If we're talking about, like, um, practicing hospitality, I don't think we think about that in terms of with our own immediate family
Right.
because, like, that's just something we do,
Yeah. We
hopefully.
take one another for granted.
Yeah, because I mean, the statistics bear out that most families do not share a meal together, but maybe a couple times a week,
Right. If
um,
that.
if that. Yeah, and if they do, they usually have phones at the table or something else to distract them from actually relationally connecting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it even goes to your closest
Yeah.
relationships of your family. How can you create spaces for hospitality there as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we could go a lot of places
Yeah.
with this, but it's a big deal.
Mhm.
It's why we have it listed as one of our 4 core values as a church, because we think this is one of the core means by which we experience the healing, connection, and purpose that Jesus came to bring.
Mhm.
We talk a lot about the connection, that center
Mhm.
of our mission statement. What does hospitality do? It creates space for connections.
Mhm.
And so we need to lean into it. We need to talk about it. We need to grow in it. And we need to become persistent in our pursuit of being good at it and creating
Yeah.
creating the kinds of hospitable, welcoming spaces physically, relationally,
Mhm.
all the things that make it warm and welcoming. And I mean, connecting is hard enough in
Mhm.
life. I think hospitality kind of greases the wheels to make it
Mhm.
help it make it happen.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it's like rails for the train to
right on.
run on. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And I think we get caught up in, like, there's a lot of things that prevent us from doing it. We
Hmm.
we either are too busy, or the house is a mess, or um a million
Yeah, a lot of
different
things.
there's a lot of reasons we could give for not doing it. But I think that's another piece to the persistence coin is in order to be persistent in something, you have to have a plan for it. And we've talked about this on the podcast plenty of times, but I think it's worth reminding ourselves in this topic specifically. But if we want to be really good at hospitality, we have to put it on our calendars
Yeah.
and we have to set goals of how we want to do it and who we want to do it with and actually identify people we may not know that well that we want to get to know
Right.
better and work towards getting something scheduled and
Yeah.
put on the calendar. And then don't put the pressure on yourself to make your house look like nobody lives there. That's just they do
Yeah.
people coming to your house don't wanna
Yeah.
they wanna come to a house that's lived in, that's more comfortable.
Right.
That's what they're used to, and
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, I think that's the big piece as well.
I agree. Get it on the calendar. As you were talking about that, it made me think too. Hospitality, most of our conversation, I'm interpreting as we need to be offering hospitality.
Mhm,
We also need to receive
mhm,
hospitality.
mhm,
Interesting. I was reading about the root word behind it, and it can mean both guest or host,
mhm,
depending on the context in which it's used. So I think a first step for someone who's, just maybe, relational connectivity with others is not the most natural mode.
yeah,
And that's, a lot of us, maybe accepting an invitation, showing up and receiving hospitality. I
mhm,
mean, if we're talking about the church context, just showing up at church
mhm,
persistently can make a life-changing impact for somebody,
mhm,
even if that's all you did.
yeah,
And there's so much more, but just persistently allowing someone to offer us hospitality, be the recipient of it, and then also reciprocate at some point as well. But I don't think we ever grow out of both giving and receiving.
yeah,
So I think as part of the blessing of being in relationship with others, sometimes we're the ones offering
mhm,
as a church or as a family or as an individual, and then other times we're the recipient, and it's a blessing and it's a gift
mhm,
in both directions. So I think if somebody's if the idea of offering hospitality is intimidating,
yeah,
maybe let's start by receiving it
yeah.
and begin that way.
Yeah, which also can be intimidating for
Sure.
people because I
Yeah.
think, we're talking about hospitality. You and I both are extroverts. So
Right.
people listening are probably like, okay, that's great for you guys. You want to be with people all the time, but what do I do as an introvert?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this week and I'm going to workshop it here on the podcast if that's okay. But, God set up a rhythm of work 6 days and then rest for a day. And, Sabbath is practiced still today by some Christians.
Hmm.
Others choose, not
Yeah.
to implement
It's
that as part
another
of.
of the under recognized themes
Yes.
in the Bible, I think.
Yeah, but I think when you think about, like, what actually entails work, I started thinking about it in the terms of extrovert, introvert, because we would agree and the Bible would agree that whether you're introverted or extroverted, community is really important, and
Yeah.
you need to prioritize it. But I think the concept of 6 days work, 1 day rest can be helpful in that. So,
Hmm.
like, for me as an extrovert, I was thinking, "Okay, I wanna be with people as much as possible." Like, that fills me up, that gives me joy. It's a
Right.
very restful thing. So, um, for me on Sabbath, like, I wanna go feast with
Yeah.
friends. I wanna go
It's a
do something fun.
life-giving
Yeah, and
thing.
that fills my cup back up for the week ahead when I'm pouring out and working. But on the days that are considered work, I need to do the work of sitting in silence and solitude because that feels like work.
Mhm. Right.
That's that's not what I need to be doing on my Sabbath because then I'm gonna be,
Yeah.
doing the
That's
opposite of what I'm supposed to do.
I like where you're going with this.
I think if you're introverted on the other side of the coin, think of it that way. Like, your Sabbath can be when you recharge socially, where you spend time alone, whether you're reading a book or going on a walk by yourself or just sitting outside on your deck, just alone, silence,
Mhm.
however you want to spend it, that can be Sabbath for you as an introvert, can be when you recharge your battery so that the other 6 days, you can invest relationally and you can accept
Right.
invitations to receive hospitality, or you can offer hospitality to
Yeah.
someone else. Yeah, I just think that's a helpful way to think about the things that don't come naturally to us.
Yeah.
And do they fall in a rest category or a work category?
Yeah. That's really good. We need to do a podcast on the Sabbath. We probably will at some point,
Yeah.
just naturally through the course of things. But yeah, I got a lot I want to say, but I don't have it right. So we should probably wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah.
I like what you're saying there about these are important things, but some important things are work to us.
Mm-hmm.
Other important things are rest to us.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do both. Both
Mhm.
work and rest are part of the calling.
Mhm.
So even receiving the hospitality of participating in church, it's going to be good. It's a good thing we all need to do, but it might fall in the work. And so it makes me think, typically in our context, for people who do talk about Sabbath,
Mhm.
we're mostly talking about Sunday being the most natural Sabbath day. But in the Bible, I mean, Jesus even said,
Mhm.
the day isn't what's important. It's that, like, which day of the week it is isn't important. What's important is that we take a day
Mhm.
and work 6, rest 1. So, like, for me, church on Sunday is work.
Mhm.
That's not, preaching a sermon, being on. I mean, you're at church, you're on, you're leading, you're teaching, you're doing different things. For us, even as people-oriented people, for other reasons, because it's vocation, it's work, and so that Sabbath rest recharge time needs to be somewhere else.
Mhm.
So for me, it's Monday. That's when I have some space to try and protect what's life-giving for exactly the reasons you just talked about. What I want people to hear is like that rest doesn't just have to be on Sunday. In our typical, culture, we have a 5-day work week and a 2-day weekend. I think of, one of the days of those 2 is kind of like personal work.
Yeah.
You got to do the laundry. You got to pay the bills. You got to
mow
do
the
a lot,
yard.
mow the yard, work around the house. Like a lot of times that's Saturday. For us, it's not an office day, but it's a work day because there's a lot of just personal stuff, grocery shopping, just stuff's got to get done. And then if you can take a day, typically on Sunday, to kind of slow down more and do some more rest. But maybe for someone who it is work to show up at church, maybe those days get flip-flopped. Maybe it's more workable to consider Sunday the personal work day, spiritual work day, and try and carve out some time on the Saturday for some alone time, taking a long walk, whatever it might be. Again, that's a whole other topic. I don't want to get too far, but
we should do a podcast on just the category of rest at some point.
Yeah.
And we can talk about Sabbath and a lot of different things. I think what made me think about it is there was an analogy I read in a book where it said if you leave a phone plugged into a charger for too long, it eventually kills the battery over time. And so it's finding the appropriate amount of recharge, which I think is found in the rhythm that God established when he created the world and work 6 days and rest for 1. And it takes trying things out and experimenting to figure out what that looks like for you and what works best. But consider if hospitality is a restful thing for you or might feel like work, and then figure out where to put it in your week. So
I didn't know we were going to land there, but it makes sense.
Either.
Okay. You never know what we're going to get.
Yeah. Well, as always, I enjoy having these conversations. We hope you guys are enjoying them too. And we hope that you'll take on the value of hospitality in your own life. And we look forward to seeing what that does for Lake Norman. And so thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the end of the episode. If you're enjoying these conversations each week, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube or the follow button wherever you listen to podcasts. It's quick, it's free, it's easy, and it makes a huge difference in helping our podcast reach more people in the Lake Norman community. Thank you for supporting the For Lake Norman podcast, and we hope you have a great